Well, thanks for staying with us. Let's dig right into the conversations. First off, let's ensure that our connection with Seuni Oni is feasible so that we can have a smooth conversation. Hello, good morning to you, Mr. Seuni. Can you hear me?
Good morning, Brian. Thank you for having me. I can hear you loud and clear.
Always a pleasure. Now, to begin with, in quite a dramatic turn of events, Meranda began presiding over plenary in the Lagos State Assembly yesterday, but until 10 minutes later when she read her resignation, citing the fact that she's a good student of history and her move is in tandem of saving the institution rather than personal ambitions. We also saw the reinstatement of Obasa, following a 49 days time off from the seat of speakership. Let's get your thoughts on this developing story.
An interesting development from Lagos, you might like to say. And for me, that's the beauty of political arrangement in issues as this. It could have become toxic, and you have a divided House of Assembly where lawmaking will take the background while personal vendetta, narrow political interest would have taken the front burner. But of course, you were aware we had a very lengthy discussion last week how some elders led by former Osun State Governor and Ogun State Governor, Bababisi Akonde, and the veteran Segun Oshoba, how they led also the leaders of the GAC, the Governance Advisory Council of Lagos, to meet with the two factions of the Lagos House of Assembly, one led by the Assembly Speaker Obasa and the other by Meranda. And the outcome was what we saw yesterday, a more peaceful arrangement. But I think we should just put our fingers crossed, because that might not just be the end of the movie that we are watching in the Lagos State House of Assembly.
Now, I like the part where you say it might not just be the end to a movie that has been quite dramatic, particularly from the angle of personal vendetta. Because it seems as though a majority of the lawmakers were clamoring for the ousting of Obasa. Following his return, do you think that there would be all peace and back to status quo without some personal vendetta from the returning speaker?
From insider information, the return of Obasa might not be a permanent one. And when I say that, that has nothing to do with the type of violent, more aggressive witch hunt. I'm sorry, that's the wrong word. Ulster that removed Obasa a few weeks ago. What we saw a few days ago, that's about 40-something days now.
49 to be specific.
49 days to be specific. Thank you, sir. Was more of colleagues who were tired of someone who was beginning to live larger than the organization itself, the House of Assembly itself, and was beginning to become a nuisance, constituting a nuisance because of his larger than life persona. But bear in mind that he's been in that saddle for over 9 years. And so the way he was ousted by the law setting up the assembly, it means he might not be qualified for what former speaker should benefit from if going by the sack. So part of the political arrangement was that he will be eased back into the system, and he now in the coming days will now do the noble thing, since he has lost the confidence of majority. We saw that yesterday. While Meranda was stepping down, people were shedding tears, they were becoming emotional. The former Nollywood actor, who is now a member of the Lagos State House of Assembly, was recognized to speak. He couldn't speak, he was so emotional, and several other persons. And that tells you where the pendulum has actually swung. Majority, the sheep of the majority had actually left Obasa. That is the truth. And so it means that house cannot hold together again under its leadership. But if somebody has served for the past 9 years, in the wisdom of the political arrangement, midwife by the elders, it will not be the right thing to just ease him out of the system, and his name now among people who have been sacked. So he was easing, and that's why I said the movie, the title rigs in Lagos State House of Assembly might not end anytime soon. So we might see some other dynamics voluntarily resigning, which of course will mean that he will be entitled to everything, the respect and every other thing that former speakers are entitled to going forward.
Now, in your opinion, this is totally the engineering of the Baba Bisi Akonde-led panel and the GAC to at least ensure that he gets some of these entitlements and not be disgraced out of office, if I get you correctly.
Absolutely, that's what I'm saying. And the timelines we're actually giving for these things to be done, some of the dramas we saw last week was because Obasa was becoming, it was growing with unease, because the timelines were not being met on the other side. We expect you to resign so that he will come in, and after coming in, he will do the honor.
Is this why he took law enforcement officers and forced his way back into the assembly last week, because of this delay in timelines?
That's exactly what I'm saying. There were timelines when Miranda was meant to step aside and go back to her position as the deputy speaker of the house. Obasa will come in, and there were timelines when Obasa was also expected to do the honorable thing. The reason for the entire arrangement is that since you have lost the confidence of the other members of the House of Assembly, majority of them, it's just proper. But if you are going, the largest voting bloc in Lagos shouldn't be denied the number 3 slot, and that was the thinking of the elders who midwifed the arrangement. Miranda is from the same senatorial district with the governor, so that means one senatorial district has the governor, and the same senatorial district has the speaker. So in their thinking, even if Obasa will no longer be there, that position should return back to the Lagos West senatorial district. That was the political arrangement. Well, from what I learned.
Thank you very much for these insights. Now, let's leave a state where this arrangement is midwifed by the Baba Bisi Akonde-led panel and the GAC has somewhat spelled calm. In River State, there's a little bit of tension, or should I say confrontation, as is the choice word of some of the news reports we're looking at this morning in what is happening in the River State House of Assembly. Following a Supreme Court judgment now, the Amaewule-led Assembly is issuing a 48-hour ultimatum to Governor Siminalayi Fubara, in which is supposed to represent the 2025 appropriation bill. The governor, on the other hand, is talking tough that despite the fact that he knows that the Amaewule-led Assembly doesn't have his best interests at heart and had rumored an impeachment, he is not afraid of any confrontations coming from them. And let's balance this debate from the governor and the House of Assembly Speaker.
Sadly, I saw the narratives across not just the social media, the traditional media like your own, TVs, radio, newspaper, analysts, trying to cast aspersion on what happened in Lagos State. When, if we place it side by side with the ongoing feud in Rivers State. But what I love telling people is that in all of the dramas that has taken place in Rivers, who are actually the loser?
The Rivers people, probably?
The people are the losers. Remember that these people were voted in, House of Assembly members, and for as long as this has dragged on, it simply means they don't have representation. That's just the meaning. The people who voted them really have had no voice since this dragged on. And so most times, and it's not a Nigerian issue, we are always quick to say, Nigerian democracy. It's not a Nigerian democracy issue. When feuding parties because of most times pride. Most times people are so opinionated and they are not willing to listen to alternative voices. It's just the proper thing to allow political, other level-headed people to come in and ensure that the right thing is done. That is exactly what has been missing in the Rivers debacle. Eventually, they went through the whole hall of the judiciary process. The Supreme Court eventually now gave a judgment. There is a saying in the Yoruba where I came from that sadly you don't return back from the court and still remain friends. Because it's not ADR, it's in alternative dispute resolutions that you have two winners in a court case. But when you go through the arbitration process in a court case, the way we have seen in Rivers, someone is bound to be the winner, another is bound to be the loser. And what we have seen now is that the judgment of the Supreme Court, even though the governor says he's still waiting for the certified true copy, the CTC of the judgment, but from the feelers, some of the statement we have heard is that, for instance, the local government, he has heeded to that the local government, that election that brought some folks in, they should leave handover to some set of people and things like that. And it just looks like the House of Assembly that have been somehow cut off from doing their legislative business in Rivers. We now have the legal backing to do same. But my fear is that even the statement they are making also is not showing that they really have the larger interests of Rivers at heart. Represent your budget. Now, if you say represent your budget and you give maybe a timeline, a week or two, that seems reasonable. But when you say 48 hours, the tensions in Rivers from the report we have gotten is a bit unnecessarily heightened. There are fears, there are rumors about impending impeachment of the governor. And so that's why you see the governor had to come out and say, well, if eventually did lead to my ouster, I'm really not bothered. What I care is that the right thing has been done. But I think this is even the time when leaders of thought, people like the former governor, Peter Odili, highly respected person on the two sides, and some elders of the state must think beyond their own narrow partisan affiliation. They must think about the interests of Rivers, and the same type of arrangement we saw in Lagos. Despite the Supreme Court judgment, they should be able to come together and ensure that there is a seamless execution of the Supreme Court judgment. I think that, for me, is where the people of Rivers would be better off, not this face-off between two contending gladiators.
I like the choice of words there, face-off, because it's often taken a more dramatic turn on the streets of Rivers. As much as the word tension has been used, we also saw roadworks by supporters loyal to Amaewule and by extension, the FCT minister. And they were chanting songs that many believe to be demeaning. They have nicknamed the governor SIM card, and it's in that line that people are asking if the judgment is worth such celebrations. Do you think that these actions in some way would further heat up the polity?
With my choice of words, Brian, you know exactly what I'm trying to say. I've been privileged to cover crisis zones. And from the little knowledge I have about even full-blown out wars, wars have never been started by guns. Wars have always been started by uncontrolled tongues. As simple as a tongue is, it is actually what fuels the use of the barrel of the gun, not the other way around. And what we are seeing since the Supreme Court judgment is that people have not learned to moderate their use of words. Like you rightly said, we have seen videos from both camps. SIM card, take SIM card, give us wiki, nobody worry Fubara. All those types of invectives are really not necessary. What we need now for Rivers State, leadership are taking a back toll. Every one of us, we know that about Rivers.
Now, much like you said, not to cut you, but also to reference a point you made earlier, the timelines in the Lagos arrangement. Is it possible to borrow that formula in solving the Rivers Assembly crisis? Mind you, Amaewule is saying that the governor has up until Friday to represent that budget, as the House will be embarking on a 12-week recess period. Help me make sense of this. Can we borrow that arrangement like we saw in Lagos, or is the case of Rivers slightly different?
I really don't think, I admitted much earlier, they allowed this to go through the whole hall of the judicial process. And there will definitely be a sense. I watch the governor's broadcast. I watch it direct. And the body language already showed you someone and the statement he made. And of course, a copy of his statement is on his social media feed, especially the Facebook. I read it there. So it's still there up to this morning. You could see someone who felt that he lost out in a sense. His statement, everything he said. That is just normal. The moment you go to court, you subject yourself to the court arbitration process. But if you had gone through ADR, for instance, where elders stepped in, you would definitely have more like a win-win situation where everyone comes out with his shoulders raised and with his egos intact. That's the difference. You saw it yesterday. The folks who were supporting Miranda, they sang her praise to high heavens. They shower encomiums on her on the floor. Nobasa was seated there, and eventually she resigned honorably, and Obasa stepped up. And after that, you saw Obasa came out and he shook. You saw the videos. He came, he shook everyone. That's actually what happened when you allow ADR. Everyone comes and it's a win-win for everybody. But the moment you go to the court, somebody will win, somebody will lose. So it is now for the elder to quickly step in. The Supreme Court, somebody said the Supreme Court is not final because it's not infallible. It's simply infallible because it's a final. If you don't like the judgment, you can only appeal to God in prayer. There is nothing, but it has to be executed. And so elders have to step in now and ensure that these rhetorics, these songs of war, these drums of war does not escalate until we start seeing bloodshed in rivers. That would be a dangerous thing. And they still have the time to do that now.
Well, very well said, Mr. Seuni Oni. Let's leave this House of Legislative issues and pick up your newspaper. I would wonder, for one, which would be my first question, why the choice of the lead headline on a prize war? I know we've been talking about some wars that might have been started if tongues are not bridled. This morning, your newspaper is headlining a prize war, and I seem more like a force of arm on the NNPC, which is also tilted towards a price slash, much like we saw Dangote Refinery do in keeping with the Ramadan period. Let's get the afterthoughts of this editorial perspective in leading on the Daily Courier this morning.
Thank you. For us, we notice something over the months in Nigeria. Issues that affect everybody are usually tossed to the background because we are more fixated on issues that concern those very narrow interests. I mean, you can say 2% of the population, like these Italian economists, the Pareto 80-20 principle. The discussions in the news, 80% of discussion in the news is usually activities of 20% of the people in the population. And so we have been busy. Last week it was El-Rufai versus some people. This week is now presidency, Lagos Assembly, Wike, Fubara, Rivers. But the price issue is what concerns all of us. We are all buying fuel. If you are not buying fuel, you will transport using fuel, and the impact will be on you. This is what we should be talking about. And if you read the newspapers today, you will understand exactly what I'm talking about. So at the editorial, we just decided that, please, let's give those ones a little priority. Let's focus on something that is affecting every one of us. For a very long time, our own economics in Nigeria does not work with the textbook economics that some of us went to the university, spent 4 years and even more in our postgraduate programs to study. That if you have more supply, prices will come down. So for a long time, we have not seen that. We are now beginning to see it as the refinery of Dangote gets better. We begin to see the impact on its pricing. And the NNPC, ordinarily that is supposed to be a state-owned refinery, seems to be taking a back seat and simply reacting whenever Dangote slashes its price. So we are seeing this type of thing, and I think it's good for the generality. I can say it unequivocally this morning that prices of even transportation is beginning to ease out. For instance, I take public transport from where I stay here in Kubwa to my office in Wuse, and a few times before now, drivers will tell you it's either 1,000, 1,200, nothing else. But now I've seen people pricing 700 and they will stop and carry them. I think for me, that's the beautiful thing. And I learned that it's the same across several other routes. That's what we want to see, because when the prices of transportation begin to come down, it will affect the prices of food, because most times they are transported from the rural communities to the urban communities. If the prices of food comes down, of course, over the years, headline inflation in Nigeria is usually affected more by the prices of food. So that means the price of food will come down, and we begin to see that type of reaction in the society. And it's good for our Muslim brothers who are going through their Ramadan period, a period when before now we usually see price of goods go to the rooftop, but we are seeing that stability, and that's why we decided that that's something we should talk about in the paper.
Well, very commendable, I must say. But let's get also some positions that have been attributed to these reasons why there is a price reduction. Whilst many look at it as more on a marketing technique from Dangote, the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association, IPMAN, is attributing this price adjustments to a stronger naira and a drop in the global price of crude oil. Let's get your insights on why IPMAN feels this is more to the credits of the naira and global oil prices.
Absolutely. The only exception to that statement was that before now we have actually seen glut, if you want to say drop, in the global price of fuel, and it really did not reflect in our commercial pricing. If you want to say the naira getting stronger every day, we have seen that consecutively, especially since the close of last year and into January. For a very long time, naira been having a bullish streak. It's not been like that since we've seen ourselves in this issue of floating the naira. The naira keeps shooting up and up and up and up, but we have seen it consistently coming down. As of yesterday, we needed to do a transaction in dollars, and we discovered it's about 1,458 thereabout. I think it's to the credit of the management at the CBN and the fiscal side. It seems some things have been done right, and we just encourage them to keep doing it. Like I said sometimes in our previous program, the econometric and macroeconomic analysis has shown that if we get our act right, we can actually have a naira to the dollar converging somewhere maybe around 1,000 or a little higher than that. And so we just need to keep on doing what we are doing, get better at that. You saw the figures from NBS the last time we had that discussion. Consecutively as a country, which we have not seen over a long period of time as well, our export earnings have actually been higher than our import. That again, that's why I said that's to the credit of the fiscal side. That's not a monetary side effect. It's because at the fiscal side we are doing something right. That's why we are not importing more than we are exporting, which is a good one. So let's sustain that trend. Let's also begin to ensure that some of the things we consume in huge measure, we put pressure on the point of purchases that they should come and set off factories here. That's the way we can keep some of our necessary drive for dollars. If we do that as a country, we'll get to that reasonable convergence of naira to dollar. And what that will also mean is that the price of fuel will go down, and the point of convergence that was mentioned, when we start producing at optimum, some have said around 600-700. In between that, we can still buy fuel at that level. So we are expecting that too.
Now, there's also another conversation on the sidelines of this that many are worried might be counterproductive towards this price reduction. Is the federal government's ban on trucks conveying more than 60,000 liters of hydrocarbon products on Nigerian roads. It's supposed to take effect within the month of March, and then by the end of the month of March, the ban is supposed to now also cover trucks that are transporting 45,000 liters of such products as well. I don't know if you foresee this as going to interfere with this reduction in price, as many transporters will be looking to recoup their losses owing to have to make 2 trips to convey the quantity they now enjoy conveying at the cost of more than just a trip.
Brian, maybe I would throw this as a challenge to ADBN also. Help us bring people who are trying to make that law so that we understand what are the alternatives for transporting crude if the ban comes into effect. Or are they saying they should not transport during certain hours of the day? Those are the details I've really not seen. I've been trying to search if I can get document that can educate me. Are they saying you cannot transport until maybe after 10 p.m. And by 6 a.m. you shouldn't be on the road again? We have had those suggestions in the past. Is that what we are implementing? Or we are saying anybody who has a truck of the capacities you have mentioned should suddenly just hurt them, they can't walk again? I really I'm lost myself when I heard that, because our train for haulage, we know, number one, we don't have train that covers every part of the country. We don't. If we had had that, then it would have been a very easy thing. It just means that we just begin to work on ensuring that haulage services are improved via rail transportation. But we don't have it. That's the reality today. The only one that is functional is actually the old one that connects Lagos to the northern flanks of the country, which is a very narrow track. And so it is impracticable. And we must not go the fuel subsidy route, where we stop fuel subsidy. We started thinking about how do we now solve the problems that were generated by removal of fuel subsidy. Instead of planning before removal, we shouldn't put ourselves inside that type of trouble. The thing we have on our neck now, we know that there is a serious accident rate from those trucks. What can we do differently? Maybe tell them, like I said, give them the window that they can transport, where you have minimal category of other vehicles on the road. You can do that. But to say you are banning it How about the investment of the people who will be grounding their trucks? Those are the things you think about before churning out policies, in my own opinion, really. It will take up.
I agree with you. And in addressing this increased accident rates with the careless attitude of Nigerians who rush to fallen petrol tankers to scoop fuel, do you think that the issue of the deplorable state of the road is being relegated to the background? Not much spotlight is on that as a probable cause for the accident. It's mostly blamed on the road culture use of the drivers and the attitude of Nigerians who throw caution to the wind to go to scoop up petroleum products from fallen tankers.
I agree. I quite agree with you. But also know that taking care of all the roads in Nigeria is not achievable in the short run. In fact, if you say in the medium term, I don't think that's achievable. So that's on one side. On the other side, there have been suggestions, like I said earlier, that possibly you confine them to travel at certain periods of the day. So you can imagine, let's take a hypothetical example. A fuel truck, maybe because of the bad road, now topples around 3 p.m. It's in the full glare of everyone, so people can be tempted to go and scoop fuel. But if the same thing happens around 3 a.m., okay, you will not have that number of people going to scoop fuel, the type we have seen, because the higher casualties is usually not because the fuel crashed, the trucks loading fuel crashed and immediately it was set ablaze. No, that's not usually what we see. It's a careless attitude. Most of the time, it's a careless attitude of people who are trying to go and scoop fuel, and in course of doing that, it gets ignited. It's because of the flame rate of so that's what we have seen over time. So that's why the policymakers must think through. It can't be a straitjacket thing. They must bring in the petrol tankers, get their own side. We all know we have a major issue on our hands. We have bad roads. We are having accidents, taking lives. But again, in order to solve it, you don't solve a problem creating another problem. Nobody does that.
Very well said, Mr. Seuni. Let's move on to another issue in the news this morning. Reports are that suspected Boko Haram members abducted an engineering professor in the Borno State Army University, that's the Nigerian Army University BU, and some other members of the university as well. Now, this report is off the back of the fact that it almost feels as though they are now back and operating unabated, referring to terrorists who fly under the banner of Boko Haram. What do you make of this report?
It's not unexpected. We have seen that their activities has actually been largely confined to some just very limited places. The level of attack they used to carry out before now, just a few years ago, they don't have that capacity again, from at least the report we've gotten out this way. So you expect them to attack, and in attacking, they will always want to come into the spotlight. And so this unfortunate incidents on the professor, I think is sad, and that is a timeless call to our security architecture that people in the school community, we heard about the one that took place in Katsina just a few days ago, where some people who stay off campus, we also see people kidnapped in that part of the country. So the security system must ensure that this type of target, in the academia, that's not a place where you see gun-wielding people all the time. If you go to universities, apart from the school security and a few other station police officers, it's a soft place. They can easily hit the place, move professors, and start bargaining for ransom. So that means our security system, there was an initiative there by the incumbent So then she was a minister of the finance, but now the director, the president of the World Trade Organization, about school protection occasioned by the sad incidents that took place in Borno then, when the Chibok girls were abducted from their hostels. So we just need to up it, bring in tertiary institutions also into that bracket, ensure that there is a measure of security. They really don't need to be armed, threatening people. You might just have people who are not carrying arms across these places. The difference is that even if there were to be an abduction, the reaction, the response time by those who are armed as tactical units who can save them will be much higher than when people are kidnapped and it's after like 20 hours before security operatives know about it. They would have taken them to far-flung places where it would be difficult to actually rescue them back. For me, what we have seen now is a measure of security relapse, and the security architecture needs to take note to ensure that we don't have a repeat of this in other parts of the country.
Now, quite condemnable, and we're hoping that the families of those abducted will be reunited with the abductees, and we're hoping that the security agents would also come out victorious in this war against terrorism. Now, whilst this is the case, I don't know if you agree with the fact that some states up until now in Nigeria are classified as Christian states and Muslim states. I don't know if you agree, Mr. Seuni.
It's a sad narrative, and I unfortunate situations very soon. Nigeria is supposed to be practicing a state that is non-religious. How do they say it again? We are a secular state. I think that's the term they usually use. But you and I know that we are just secular on paper.
Mr. Seuni, why I ask is because of the Ramadan observation. Now, statistics coming in this morning peg it at 11.5 million school children that have now been unfairly restricted access to education, and this would last for the entire period of Ramadan. 5 states have been named this morning, to include Kano, Katsina, Kebbi, and we have Bauchi joining them as well, where schooling activities have been put on hold until the end of Ramadan. In some states, much like Kebbi, even the hours of work for civil servants have also been drastically reduced. On one angle, the argument is that it's in keeping with the religious observance. On the other angle, the Christian Association of Nigerians is calling that it is not fair to students who are not Muslims, who might be atheists, Christians, or even traditional worshippers. How do we get a society where, in your words, it's a secular state and religious holidays should not interfere with learning activities?
Brian, it's coming to the center of discussion, but that was our lead headline last week, Thursday. And I can actually give you data from the top of my head. Bauchi, Katsina, Kebbi, and Borno, they are actually the state with the highest number of out-of-school children in Nigeria. Again, Bauchi, followed by Borno, and after that, Katsina. They top the list of schools or of states where education for children is actually inadequate. I'm telling you statistics. And that was because it was our lead deadline on Thursday last week. And it's still the same state that are now telling children in their students and pupils in their state to close school for 5-6 years for Ramadan. We went further to now do a comparison because Islam is a global religion. It's not just practiced in Nigeria. So we did a global study to ascertain if there is any nation in the world where holidays are declared for schools to shut down during Ramadan. And our finding shows that there is no single nation in the world, including Saudi Arabia, that of course is the headquarters. There is no nation in the world. What we notice is what Kebbi, for instance, introduced for their civil service. The hour of work is usually reduced. That is, most time is reduced by 2 hours to ensure that Muslims Umar in those nations can have extra rest hour because of the effect of the fast on their productivity. That was what we saw. There is no single nation in the world that shut down their schools to observe Ramadan. And it's even more appalling that the states who are doing this, they are the states where education in their state is all-time low. So it simply tells you that these people are actually divorced from reality. They are divorced from reality. And I'm actually surprised that Khan is just coming out now, because Khan in Bauchi, for instance, when we interviewed the chairman of Khan in Bauchi last week, he said what they did was that, we interviewed the chairman of Christian school owners, because when they heard it, Christians who own school quickly came together and said what's going to be our reaction. They went to Khan, and the Khan in their state actually told them that though the governor claims that he has met with every stakeholders and every stakeholder has a buy-in, but there was never a time that Khan in the state was called for any meeting prior to shutting down the schools. And we noticed that across all these states, they now put up very stiff monitoring team to ensure that any church or any private individual that flouts this order receives the harshest sanctions you can imagine. Now, my intervention for me is that if you now see the level of discussion, and that has been the reason for our level of retrogression in this country, is that if you go on social media, traditional media, you just see the discussion is now reduced to religion. Instead of the fact that it's out there, people's education have been disrupted, and some some examination body will not change their calendar because of anything. Common entrance is first coming for primary school, people who are exiting primary school to secondary school. It is a NECO that now conducts junior WAEC, and the date has been fixed. WAEC, GAM, the rest of them, they are there, and you say schools should shut down. And people are discussing around, no, what is good for Christians is good for Muslims. Come on. We should not be discussing this in 21st century in a nation that is supposed to be a secular nation. But sadly, those are the type of leaders we have across Nigeria. Type of leaders who don't reason to facts and figures. They only reason to emotions and narrow prism of religion and ethnicity.
Now, on that part of leadership, do you think at this part we need to hear the Honorable Minister of Education, Mr. Tunji Alausa, make a statement in this regard? What are the respective state house of assemblies in these states saying? And should even be a matter before the National Assembly in regards to this reoccurring practice that did not just start this year?
Is Tunji Alausa the federal minister? I think he's a state minister.
For states.
The federal minister is a Muslim, and you know the thorny issue of religion and ethnicity in this country. But also don't forget we run a federal system, so you will not blame ministers. States, governors, states, house of assemblies constitutionally have the right, because education is on the concurrent list. It's not on the exclusive list. So it's not a federal government thing. is states, because it's on the concurrent, they can legislate on how they can say they are shutting down schools for 1 year. The minister at the federal level can only advise them not to do that. But in issues like this, I expect the Minister of Education to come out and advise state governors and also tell them the implication of what they are doing. They are actually taking those children a few months backwards by this decision. And that's a clear thing.
Very well then, in concluding our review this morning of headline stories, the last issue is as it concerns the high cost of medical care. In line with that, reports are that many Nigerians now tilt towards self-medication, totally disregarding the dangers of kidney failure, drug resistance, antimicrobial resistance as well, and the other dangers that accrued to such harmful practice. I don't know if it's another issue that would be left for either a regional approach, a federal government approach, or is it a matter of sensitization? What could be done in this regard?
Well, thank you. I want to look at this headline from two perspectives. On the increasing cost of Medicare on one side, and the alarmist, I deliberately choose that word, the alarmist tendency of saying such thing as self-medication. Because most times when people talk about self-medication, they also want to suggest that the herbal trado medical care is self-help. And so the only way to treat yourself is using the Western Medicare. I think that's not correct. And I really find it unacceptable that a nation like Nigeria with very rich history of highly effective tradomedical care, we've not deemed it fit to ensure that we formalize and organize that sector of our country. For me, it's unfortunate. While I was much younger, I know, for instance, that there were a certain type of ailments that we had then, things like fever. While I was young, I can't remember anybody taking us to the hospital. Our parents have a way of mixing these different leaves together. I'm Yoruba, so they mix those things together, and just drinking and bathing those things will become better off, highly effective. I know of several other things that you just need to call, tell the people who know what to do, they put them together, and you are good. What I expect the Minister of Health and those who are saddled with responsibility in that space to do is to see how we can up our ante, encourage these people to now begin to bring in some level of exactness to the dosage, to the prescriptions, and we will save ourselves this cry for cost of Medicare is increasing. Because there are some of these things that you really don't need to pay anything. It just means you go to the closest bush, the closest farm, you get them, or you talk to people who go to farm, they get it for you, and you really don't need to pay anything. And they will be as effective, if not more effective, than the Medicares in the hospitals. That's what I said, that is on one side. So we must start thinking. I'm aware that India, where many people run to today, the reason why we are running there is that they've been able to formalize their tradomedical department in that country, and they are also operating not suboptimally, they are operating optimally like the Western drugs. I know also that that is also true for China. That is true for several other parts of the world. Can we also borrow a leave and also formalize our own health sector? On the other side is the cost of Medicare. We had this discussion sometimes ago when the minister, when he came in then, one of the promises that he made, among several other things, I mean Professor Pate, the Minister of Health, one of the promises he made was that we would begin to have mega pharmaceutical companies set up in Nigeria, because that's the only way we can cut down on the huge cost of bringing in drugs from other countries. And the danger of even bringing in drugs from this country is that sometimes your level of control is very limited. It's very, very, very limited. And just to also add that what NAFDAC discovered in major open drug markets across the country, in Anambra, in Lagos, and other parts of the country, is a scary situation and a major reminder that we must find a way to ensure that our pharmaceutical companies in Nigeria have a revival of a sort. And I think government at the federal level has a huge duty to actually do in this area. And at the sub-national, we have seen state government invest in brewery. At least I know of Benue government. It just put a huge sum of money to support alcohol production in their state. I know Anambra has a huge stake in another alcoholic brewery company. Is it wrong if we now start seeing state government and even local government support pharmaceuticals, maybe to produce the common drugs in their own local government in their state? I think that's the way to think. When a pharmaceutical is just running something very little, just tell them, give us 50% stake. It will increase employment. We will have drugs at reduced cost. We will have drugs that we can fully control to ensure that they conform to the strictest and highest standards. This, for me, this is how governors should think. But we have a state governor, for instance, that budgeted 98 billion for Ramadan fasting. We had a governor who budgeted several billions for marriage. That can be serious leadership. And that's exactly where we are getting it wrong. So these things are not cast in stone. They can be solved if we get our priorities right. And that's why we are having the issues we are having. As a nation, at the federal level, at the state level, at the local government level, we don't know how to prioritize. We don't know how to forgo the wrong alternatives to ensure that as a nation, we become better, we get better dividends from our investment as a people.
Well, very salient points raised on the show this morning. We must thank you for your time on the program, Mr. Seuni Oni, and your contributions to national issues.
Thank you so much for always having me, and do have a great day ahead.
You too, sir.